Hey everyone, my name is Drake and welcome to my channel. On this channel, we're going to be going into conversations about wildlife, conservation, nature in general, and the world around us. So if you've ever been interested in maybe some species or animals that live in your area and you want to know more about them, we'll go into great detail here on this channel. But first and foremost, I want to dive into some large scale topics and be very generalized about those, just to get people who aren't really in depth about nature, reel them in a little bit and see if we can touch their heart in a couple ways. So first and foremost on this channel, we're going to go and discuss biomes, what they are, where they are, how large they are, what types of species and animals occupy those. And those are going to be, we're going to stick to 6 just to be a little bit more generalized. I know you can break those down into probably 20, but we won't do that here on this channel. So we'll go through these pretty quickly. So that's going to be the tundra, the taiga, grasslands, deserts, and then temperate and tropical rainforest. So those will be the 6 of discussion. So come along and we'll dive into those. So first and foremost, like I said, we're going to have 6 of these. There's going to be 3 videos, 2 biomes in each video. First, we'll go ahead and discuss the tundra. So where that is located is going to be the top 5th portion of the globe, and that's going to occupy the terrestrial area, up there. It's very cold. It's almost like a barren desert with a lot of snow. There's not a lot of vegetation. There's not a lot of animals that live there. So the vegetation that does occupy that area is very, very good at living without lots of water. Since there's at the most 6 to 10 inches of water there per year, even with snow melt on the quick seasons that they do have up there. And that's going to occupy like I said, the top 5th portion of the globe, but that's going to be just for some reference material here. The top portion of Alaska, top portion of Canada, Arctic Circle area, the top of Sweden, Norway, and Finland, and then the top ring of Russia and Siberia as you head east. So that's what that all occupies. But the cool thing about the tundra is there's a lot of animals there that are specialized to there that live nowhere else in the world. A big one that you might know of, very famous on the Coca-Cola cans, is going to be those polar bears. So polar bears are very specialized to the tundra. What they eat only lives up there as well. So they're going to be eating seals. Once those come up through their breathing holes, the bears have the opportunity to be sneaky, if you will, and scoop up a few seals. But with that comes I don't want to go in too many different directions here, but climate change now is affecting that area more so than any other, with glaciers melting and ice sheets receding. But we'll touch on that here in a little bit. But I'll continue with the animal species that do occupy that area. And like I said, they're very specialized. Polar bears, went over that. Musk ox. I don't know if you've ever heard of a musk ox before, or what they look like. They're very short, stocky, and broad-shouldered animals that have very thick fur and wool, to survive the harsh winters that they have there, because on average it can be about 30 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit in these areas throughout the winter, and have, gale force winds and things like that. So they have to be able to take the brunt end of that weather and survive. So that's a very specialized animal that can endure those situations. Another cool animal that does take advantage of this area is Arctic fox. Not very large animal. They do have very cool ability to change their coat colors. It's called polymorphism. And in the wintertime, there'll be a full white color, and in the summertime, that they do have up there, which is very short, it'll be more of a gray charcoal color. And what allows them to be very specialized in the winter is they can walk on top of the snow without falling in it, because they're very light. So that allows them to to take advantage of that. And they're eating small rodents up there as well, like lemmings. They almost look like a guinea pig. That's what the foxes are eating up there, and mice and things like that too. But for the most part, the only other two animals that really come to mind that stick out, well, there's three. So snowy owls, they do live up here for a little while. And then they do migrate down here in the lower 48. Here in Wisconsin, we see snowy owls quite often here in our winters. Here in the Fox Valley, we do see quite a few, especially around the Green Bay area in Kaukauna. But caribou and wolves are two of the major animals that do occupy the tundra. Caribou are in herds of tens of thousands at any one time throughout the seasons, and they make mass migrations for breeding. And when they drop all of their calves, this is actually one of their breeding protections, is, if you want to call it that way. I'm sure there's more of a specific term for it, but when they breed, they all drop their calves at one time, so it allows them to have the ability to distract predators from their own calves, since there's so many of them all over the place. And wolves are going to be the main culprit of attacking those caribou. I don't know if polar bears chase down caribou. I'm sure it's probably happened, more often than not, but that's something that probably does happen as well. So, but the animal species here is going to be, very, very low, under 1,000 species total. There's some more things that do come into play here. Humans, there's not a ton of human population in this area. There's been Inuit populations that have lived up here for thousands and thousands of years and hunted whales and things like that, and very little rain and permafrost. I'll touch on that right now as a very unique characteristic of the tundra. So they do have a few inches that do melt for their soil level to allow lichens and shrubs and very few grasses to grow there during their growing season. But below that is a layer of soil a couple feet down that's permanently frozen, that almost never melts, and that's going to be called permafrost. So in the recent years and decades, as the glaciers are melting and the ice sheets are receding, the permafrost is actually starting to melt too. So like I said, the tundra is going to be a rapidly changing biome in the next decades to come. So we'll have to watch out for that and see what's going to happen. And the levels of the oceans are going to start to rise up there too. So this will be an area for everyone to keep their eye on for the first. Jump into the next topic, the next biome that I want to discuss with you, and that's going to be the taiga, and that's going to be just below the tundra. So like I said, the tundra is going to occupy the top fifth of the planet, the Arctic Circle area, and then the taiga is going to be like Canada, Alaska, Russia, Siberia. It's a very large area. It actually is the largest terrestrial biome that we have, covering over 6.6 million square miles. Hard to wrap your head around that one, but it's quite large. And so the taiga is actually, if you want to look at it as a large forest, look at it as a large forest with lots of pine trees in it. So it's a coniferous forest dominated by pine trees. The thing about this area is there's a lot of history here. It got started once they came over here in their fur trapping days. A lot of fur-bearing animals do live here. There's not a huge jump in species diversity here compared to the tundra, but there is more, noticeably more, when it comes to small animals, so to speak. There's actually some animals here that have adapted to utilize hibernation as a way of surviving. Some small rodents, bears, things like that. The taiga is not super diverse. It does have a jump in species, from the fur-bearing species to rodents to raptor species, owls. Those do occupy this area since it's a large forest. There's going to be a large a large section of fur-bearing mustelids that live in this area. And what mustelids are, it's a family or Mustelidae that has secretion glands that don't smell very well. So that's all you generalize all you need to know. That's how they're characterized, is they do have specialized glands. And the French utilize those to make jackets. You know, mink, beaver's a rodent. That's not a mustelid, but they did utilize beavers a lot. Mink, otters, wolverines, weasels, things like that do occupy this area very heavily. And then once they start to move down into the lower 48, there's still a very heavy population of those here too. But you know, the taiga, it does have short, wet summers and long, cold winters, just like the tundra. Not as severe in some cases, but winter there does get very cold. You know, it can be anywhere from 30 below zero, and then might get up to 50 degrees Fahrenheit in the summertime. But it does have, you know, there's got to be some sort of fertile soil up there if it does have such a large forest. But it doesn't have tons of nutrients there. You know, if you're dealing with a lot of pine trees, you're going to have some acidity in the soil from all those needles getting dropped. So that's something to take into account there as well. But like I said, the animals do hibernate there as a way of surviving. You're going to have a very few amphibian species that will take advantage of hibernation there, as well as reptiles. A couple snakes, couple frogs, couple salamander species do occupy this area. But some animals have also adapted to traveling further south once it does get cold. Upland game birds, waterfowl, geese, ducks, things like that. They'll just travel south for the winter and stay here in the United States in the lower 48. Some apex wolves, bears. You're also going to have other predators that aren't as high up on the chain, you know, coyotes, wolverines, all of those mustelid species that I mentioned before, otters, mink, things like that. Those are all carnivores. They'll eat fish and things like that, amphibians, but mainly up here it's going to be bears, and you're going to have all the bear species in this area, especially Alaska. You're going to have the polar bears that come down. You're going to have grizzly bears, Kodiak brown bears, black bears. So those are going to be the top dogs or top bears, so to speak, in the area. But wolves are going to be very, very prominent here. Large packs of wolves that go across all of Canada and Russia and Siberia. So those are probably the most threatening animals that do occupy this area. But you're going to have, you know, moose, deer, elk, a lot of ungulates that do occupy this area as well. And those are going to expand across usually the whole, taiga territory, which is very cool. You know, so this area also has some of the oldest trees in the world. So you're going to have these pine trees be thousands of years old. You know, and how they survive this way is, you know, their bark has adapted so much so that it can withstand fire. So that is how some of these trees last so long. You're going to get forest fires through these areas every single year. And what they'll do is they'll burn through the undergrowth and the small trees, and that'll make more nutrients for those larger trees. But with the larger trees as well, as you know, they don't have a huge canopy like some large deciduous trees might. But, you know, they're still going to choke out some of the smaller vegetation on the bottom. But that's how these large trees can survive so long here, is the thick bark. But, you know, there's not a lot more to go into the taiga. Like I said, it's the largest biome that we have, is a recap. There's roughly a little over 1,000 species here that occupy it for wildlife's sake, more than the tundra. Not a lot more, but more. The biome has tons of trees. They do get more rain. Their summers and winters are still pretty harsh, so to speak. They do have large booms of insects in the summertime, so there's going to be a lot of mosquitoes and biting flies around. So there's, for the most part, there's not a ton difference. But once we start getting into the grasslands and the deserts, you'll start to see a large difference in the shape of the biomes, and what they can produce and what all can occupy them. But for the most part, the taiga is just a very, very large forest, and you're going to find a very unique characteristic of species that can occupy it.